Hi, everyone. We just asked before we begin that you turn your cameras off and mute your microphones just in case there might be some technical difficulties. Hi, my name is Sue Smith. I'm a partner at the Emerson Group and a board member of We. We was created to convene, connect, and encourage women leaders in the wellness landscape to help build stronger women executives across the retailer, supplier, and business partners communities. We are women enhancing the future, developing across generations, and advancing health and wellness. Today, we are continuing the conversation we began several months ago. How we, and yes, that pun is intended, as a community and an industry can support diversity and inclusion. We are passionate about this conversation. This is the third in a 4-series discussion. Today's topic is about supporting African-American entrepreneurship. To gain insight into this discussion, I contacted Miss Edwards from Alafia Brands. Just 5.5% of US businesses are Black owned. Yet 44 million Black people living in the US comprise 13.4% of the total population. Black business owners are 59% more likely to be millennials than the average business owner. 59% more likely. That statistic blew me away. The number one challenge of Black-owned businesses is the lack of funding. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta reported in its 2019 Small Business Credit Survey that on average, Black-owned firm applicants received approval for smaller shares of the financing they sought compared to white-owned small businesses. In addition, larger shares of Black-owned firm applicants did not receive any of the financing they applied for, 38%, compared to 20% of white-owned business applicants. So that's what we are here to talk about today, how we in the CPG and retail industries can support Black entrepreneurs. And in doing so, build a more diverse, inclusive, relevant, and profitable industry. Over the next 50 minutes, our illustrious panel will discuss these opportunities. There will be time for Q&A, so please put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Today's discussion will be recorded and available on our website, forwe.org, and that's the number 4, #, whatever you want to call it, forwe.org, and you can share it with your teams. Now I have the honor and privilege of introducing Wendy Liebmann. She's my friend, a mentor, CEO, and chief shopper at WSL Strategic Retail. She will be your moderator. Wendy.
Thank you, Sue. That was a lovely introduction of me. Thank you. And you really grounded the discussion today and the urgency and the imperative that we all have to build this community of entrepreneurs. I am absolutely delighted and honored to be here for the third of these sessions. It's been quite an extraordinary journey. I must say I have learned a tremendous amount. Being an entrepreneur myself, I am very eager to learn even more today. So let me jump right in. Let me introduce our, as Sue said, our illustrious panelists. They are illustrious, so I'm going to read a little if I can't remember it all this morning. I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order by first name. We are very informal here. And we will have a 50-minute or so discussion. So type your questions in the Q&A box, and we, as Sue said, we'll get to those as soon as we can at the end. So let me begin. My first guest and partner in crime in this discussion is Angel Beasley. Angel is the Merchandise Director of Specialty Hair at Walmart. Welcome, Angel. Lovely to have you here. Angel is heading up and passionate about equality in the hair aisle. And while she works with big brands, she also works with a lot of small brands. And her real passion is to make sure that we see diversity and all the benefits of having all the best companies in the hair aisle, amongst other places. Her background is Walmart, marketing at Walmart, also Anheuser-Busch. And she's also an entrepreneur, which is why she acts like one in the hair aisle. She I think co-founded her family's company. She'll tell us about that one day over a cocktail or a coffee. That's a separate one. So welcome, Angel. It's lovely to have you here. Our second guest is Derek Gaskins. Derek is the CMO of Yesway, and Yesway also a retailer. Hey, Derek, how are you? Yesway is a national chain of about 450 convenience stores. So big retailers, small retailers. We wanted to cover all the bases today. His title is CMO, but actually he's, as my mother would say, he's the chief of everything. He's not only marketing and digital, but he's also very engaged in the merchandising, procurement, and working with all the vendors. He too has a fascinating background before he came to the retail side of things and the convenience store industry, which is so entrepreneurial all by itself. And his background with Nabisco and Goldman Sachs and Procter & Gamble. So he too brings a lot of history, experience, and integrity to this discussion. So thank you for joining us. Erica Culpepper, speaking of friends in the family, Erica Culpepper is the General Manager of L'Oreal, the L'Oreal Multicultural business. We can't see her yet. I know she's floating around there somewhere in the ether, and she'll join us in a minute when she remembers to turn on her camera and look fabulous. Meantime, I'll keep introducing her. Erica has had a long experience at L'Oreal. There she is. Hello, Erica. She's worked across a lot of the businesses at L'Oreal and now runs the multicultural business. L'Oreal was one of the first companies to recognize the importance of multicultural businesses and Black businesses, and acquired Carson and Soft Sheen and Dark and Lovely, and more recently Carol's Daughter, which Erica was actively involved in the acquisition of. So she too has an extraordinary background, and she just won an award from Cosmetic Executive Women as an Achiever of the Year. Congratulations. Yeah, we're very excited about that. Yeah, absolutely. So welcome. And last but not least, Psyche Terry, who rounds out our panel today. Psyche, hey Psyche. Psyche is co-founder of UI Global Brands, and that means, UI means Ultimate Innovations, which seems really perfect. So we've got big and small manufacturers, big and small retailers. Psyche is recognized for her business called Urban Hydration, which is focused around clean and healthy personal care business. And she's been doing this with her husband for 16 years. And they're still together, and they have 3 kids. This is an amazing woman. I think everybody here has 3 kids or 2 kids, except me, but that's all right. I have a husband, and you've got 3, you've got 3, you've got 2, and you've got 3, right? I think so. Oh, fingers everywhere. You make up for me. You round out the world. I've just got a tall, long drink of water who acts like a kid sometimes, but anyway, the thing I love about Psyche's, when you think about Psyche and her business model, is not only the giving back that is grounded into her business model, but also she talks about naturally happier, healthier care. And I think that's a perfect way for us all to think about our lives these days. So welcome all of you. It's wonderful to have you here. We're going to jump right into the questions. So the obvious question to me is, why is it so important for us to be engaging with Black entrepreneurial companies? What do these companies bring to us as a community? So Angel, I'm going to toss that one right at you to get started.
Thank you, Wendy. So excited to be here. I think that is a deep question that we could probably spend the whole time talking about, why Black ownership and founders matter. The first that comes to mind is they serve an underserved consumer. So they have the lens to understand the Black consumer, what she wants, what she needs, and they're able to bring that to her. Secondly, they serve the broader community as well. A lot of what I think of as trend and pop culture, a lot of that comes from the Black community and the urban community. And so them having that lens and being able to tap into the vibe of the country, the vibe of what's popular, like we are trending and always trending and always setting the tone. And so having a company that understands that really brings what's next, what's going to be popping, what's going to be, especially in the beauty space, what's going to be hot for the next 10 years, 20 years. It really does come from the Black community here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Derek, when we were catching up the other day, you talked about the communities that you serve across the 10 states, I think. And you talked about the importance of recognizing the community you serve. Is that something, you want to add on to here?
Certainly will. I mean, first and foremost, Angel gave great background, and I would double down and co-sign many of those things. And I think even evolving beyond beauty, the thing that I talked about was, growing up in inner city Washington, D.C., I would have never thought that culturally I would have things to bring to the table in terms of either small format retailing, grocery, and convenience. But whether it's trend setting or being a consumer, I think all of us, we know it's good for business. And so, the first rule of any marketer or any merchant is to know who your customer is. And I've actually challenged my team in a biblical, but I'll use words like know thy customer, because it's that serious. And when you start segmenting and identifying who's driving the trends in snacking, in wellness, in beauty, as she just touched on, it is imperative that, we serve and we have representation who looks like the customer base. And, my firm is very entrepreneurial, and we went out to grow by acquisition. So we consciously said, we want to go into food deserts. We want to go into underserved areas and put in quality retail. And that means oftentimes that knowing who those customers are, and if they're Black and brown or the mosaic that makes up this nation, then I need to be able to meet those needs with products, services, and quality.
Mm-hmm. And for Erica and Psyche, that notion about the value that either you bring, Psyche, or Erica, the companies that come to you that you've acquired, the importance of this community. Erica?
Yeah, I can jump in. I am fascinated by the conversation we're having, because we had a piece of research last year that came out from Nielsen that quantified the impact of the Black consumer, not just in the beauty space, not just in the grocery space, as Derek just mentioned, but nationally and internationally. And really that there is this cool factor that the Black consumer has that has a halo effect across every single consumer group. And the fact that we are having a conversation on how underserved this consumer is, it's a problem. And so we, as a big multinational conglomerate organization, we recognized this very early on back in the late 1990s and said we have to do better as a company to figure out how we can share beauty for all within this space. And that was why we decided to show up and be there for this consumer. But the reality is that the consumer has a voice, and that they're important, and we need to make sure that we are fully serving all of his or her needs. And I live in the beauty world, so from a beauty perspective, in that we are truly delivering beauty for all. And what the Black consumer brings, and Black entrepreneurs, is an authenticity and a connection to the community that we as a big conglomerate organization would never be able to have. So the conversations I can have from a brand standpoint on a brand like Carol's Daughter with a strong founder story is much different than the conversation I can have on a big global beauty brand trying to connect with the community. So it's the connection, the authenticity that we have with the community that's so important.
So Psyche, you're it, because you are one of these incredibly authentic brands. Your recognition of what you bring, how would you add to that conversation? You're seeing it from the, you're the icon in this, right?
am. I didn't realize that my opinion mattered so many years ago when I was using oatmeal to try to change my hair texture or other products on the shelves. I used to save up my allowance, and I'd head over to a drugstore or a local grocery store and buy beauty products off the shelves to try to update my appearance. And a lot of what's changed for me and what's helped me to really choose to be authentic in our story is those products that I was buying. Those products weren't led by women that understood my needs or women that created products for my needs. They were usually led by white men, and the messaging and the marketing was usually it wasn't built for what I needed to hear at the time. The neat thing about what I've done over the years is I've really been able to listen to customers. We say on something on our products, we say hashtag, not only does nature unite us, but we also say BFF approved, salon tested and BFF approved. And that's a really big storyline in the Black community. Because for ages, literally, we've been sharing and passing notes and sharing and passing beauty recipes and rituals on how to get the best X, Y, and Z. The fact that you can now have owners and creators of these recipes and these rituals putting their products in those stores, not only do you have these long historic storylines or these long historic recipes, you also have the value and the benefit of our story and our belief and how much we credit ourselves versus sharing someone else's exterior belief of our beauty and what it should or shouldn't look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that raises the next question, which is really then knowing that there's this opportunity, value for community as well as for organizations. How do we go about that? How do we advocate? I mean, within organizations, how do you find these companies and how do you support these companies? I'm going to ask, Angel and Derek first, because you're the ones that, tend to put these brands, these companies on the shelves. And then we'll talk about how a company like L'Oreal, thinks about finding the right companies to build out this opportunity. Angel, you want to talk a little bit about how you find and then support Black entrepreneurs at Walmart?
So the fun thing about my job is that I'm super passionate about hair and beauty. So I'm a consumer first. So finding brands tends to sometimes be brands that I've tried or heard my friends talk about. I spend a lot of time on social media. Instagram is my new way of sourcing new and fun brands because they have the opportunity to show up for free, essentially, and advertise and create all these awesome stories. And if they're doing that on Instagram, I can easily flip that and make it happen in store. We also have some great reps that bring brands to us. They do this for a living and they have their ear to the street of what's going on. They bring them to us. And then we have programs within Walmart, like Made in the USA, for example, where we're able to interview and talk to a lot of different brands that our own company are finding. I think the hardest thing is making sure a company has sustainable growth, bringing them in, nurturing the relationship, helping them understand the process of Walmart. And we're trying to do this in a bigger and better way moving forward to where we actually have test stores. This came from an idea from one of our reps, Damar. He's with First Choice gave me the idea, hey, you need some test stores for your Black-owned businesses. So we have about 200 that we're rolling out. And then we're also going to be doing a program to help mentor those brands as they go along.
Mm-hmm. And Derek, in the small format businesses, how different or similar is that? How do you access developing brands?
Yeah, for us, we have to work a little harder, right? I mean, size certainly matters. And I have to be intentional and purposeful. We use tools, we use associations, very fragmented. So in the convenience business, for instance, there's 155,000 stores, right? No one company dominates. Almost 95,000 are owned and operated by individual entrepreneurs. So that means to get your products in, supply chain matters, distribution matters. You need to be on someone's proverbial radar. We will work with NACS, which is the National Association of Convenience Stores. And while the name is national, it truly is global, and purposely look at opportunities from hardware to supply and procurement opportunities to even category management and products to merchandise and carry in the stores. About a year ago, I got involved with ECRM, and we use RangeMe, and have been purposeful, and I've pushed that within my org, because RangeMe has actually helped reduce a lot of the clutter that would typically come into someone such as me, where everyone hears what I do, and of course you want to sell your product. This helps do so in a much more structured, process-driven way. And we actually have a Black-owned business part of that, where there are 100 now products that are participating that are entrepreneurs. And it can be everything from snacks to beverages to HBA, health and beauty aids. I'll try not to use so many acronyms.
That's all right. The world we live in, right, of acronyms, right?
Yeah. So really being very purposeful, and will I double down as well? I think that Angel gave exceptional feedback that as a consumer, there are things that I've tried or that I'll see that are regional. And sometimes as a competitive advantage, if I can get that into my distribution system in a region where others don't have it, that's going to help me grow my business. And so very conscientious, and, spoke about that. Didn't realize that being a consumer, going to the bodega or the corner store and those kinds of things, that would help me with my job, but it absolutely has.
Yeah. And Psyche, I think about the access you've gained over these 16 years, 10 years, 2 years. I think about your life in those segments. How have you found that as you've looked at distribution and where to go and who's been most open to you?
I was selling products to church members and family members, and we grew that from church family to door-to-door salons, and slowly but surely I had a retailer believe in me I think 8 years ago. And the beauty of that relationship was that buyer said, hey, we had some things work and we had some things that didn't work. And those are the things that I love as a creator and as a brand producer, are buyers, such as Angel, that are in the industry that believe in Black-owned businesses. And the neat thing is, when you're out and you create and you're a listener and a consumer of the business, then you also, and a student of the business, then what we did is we created more and we created better and we worked harder, which allowed us to go from that one store to, I think we're closing in on, by January, we'll see about 19,000 stores. And that's, we've definitely restarted our distribution channel and chain this past March. So from March, we went from 5 stores at CVS to 14,000 plus stores this coming January. Why? Because of not just providing a product, but providing a product that meets a different need, or I see the market differently, I see needs differently. I'm able to tap into products that are best selling in a category. And lo and behold, if we wouldn't have had a face wash that's totally different from other face washes on the market, because I've got a different vantage point, we wouldn't be doing as well as we are in the entire category. But
yeah, well, you also, sorry, no, you finish.
Yeah, no, we're needed. Black businesses are needed. We have a different vantage point.
Yeah, we also, Miss Erica is back. We were missing her for a minute. Oh, she's scratchy. Are you all right with us, Erica? Yeah, okay. There she is. We're thinking you're on mute, so unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry, I switched devices.
No, 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 don't worry. This is, this is Zoom world. We all know this. We're waiting for dogs and cats and children and husbands and phones to ring and all that. Nothing's perfect anymore, right? We've learned to be our lovely natural selves. So what I was going to ask you there, Psyche, was, it's extraordinary to me that all this has happened in the middle of a pandemic. So your growth, I think I think the ability, and I say it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, including mine, the agility to respond, right? To see an opportunity and respond is the other advantage of small companies, but small African-American, Black-owned companies too. That's a great opportunity, it seems to me.
Yes, Wendy, we were all about hair care and hand and body lotion and body washes. But that's not what customers needed right in the smack dab of June 2020. They needed hand sanitizers and they needed hand washes. And the ability to be small enough to have that agility to stop a shampoo run or a hand and body lotion run and say, hey, all hands on deck. We need 2-ounce hand sanitizers. We need 8-ounce hand washes. Go. We need millions of them, in fact. Mm-hmm. It's been a phenomenal change for our business. And if we weren't small, right, it takes a year and a half. And I've been in corporate where it takes years to get packaging, mm-hmm. get the right fragrance, and we're like, we've got a fragrance. We know what we want to look like. Let's just go. We got to make it happen, make it happen, make it happen. That's how we roll in small business America.
Yeah, I think that's how business is learning to respond now, right? Not just small. We're all learning from small businesses to respond quickly in these moments. Erica, you have a unique perspective because you've been the acquirer of small businesses and small Black-owned businesses, and that role of supporting the business as you bring it in and being the advocate for that business. Can you talk about the different challenges that you see on that side of the fence?
Yes, absolutely. And I was having a little envy as Psyche was talking about how quickly they could respond and make the hand sanitizers. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a very interesting dynamic to be in the acquisition space. Mm-hmm. Because when you go through the initial process, it's like a big love fest on both sides. Like you are in love. It's like the beginning of a new relationship, like you're really in love. Everything is great. And then once the acquisition goes through, all the realities start to come out on both sides. And so if I could encourage one thing, it would be to be flexible, because you come in on both sides with expectations of how things are going to be. And the reality is that it's not like that at all. And that we have to be flexible on both sides. So I can share that even from a distribution standpoint, just to kind of tie all the pieces together, when we first acquired Carol's Daughter, it was only in 2,500 doors. And we quickly expanded within, I would say, 1 year from 2,500 doors to 30,000 doors. That was probably too fast. And the initial plan we had was that we were going to have a much slower build, but there was so much excitement. Every retailer in America was clamoring to have this brand. And so we all held hands and made the decision to move really fast. And hindsight is 2020. I would not recommend that now. Like I would recommend to stay on track the way we had initially planned. So flexibility is really key. Understanding that there are pros and cons on both sides, and that there's a value to each, and that we have to allow time to learn each other, learn our business model as we start to roll out.
Yeah, and you had talked a little bit, Angel, before about the sort of levels of adoption of a new brand, a new business within Walmart. Can you just talk a little bit about that sort of the tiers you have?
Yes, to Erica's point, like scaling a business in the right way is so important, because you could go and expand a business to those 30,000 stores and then decide it's not working and delete them and kill somebody's business. So we have to be really protective of how we grow. And so what we're doing is, like you said, a 3-tiered approach. The beginning approach is like somebody that's ready to go in Walmart. They're ready to go into our 200 test stores. They have all the infrastructure to do that well. And then we have a second layer of, you may not be ready for stores today, but you're definitely ready for .com. You have a digital brand and a business that you can expand, and we can work with you to get you to scale at store. And then we have another tier for our Black-owned businesses that are new, that aren't ready for store, they're not ready for .com, but we see so much potential in them. So we're gonna be helping to incubate them, to teach and train them along the way through master classes. And this way we can help them, like I said earlier, have longevity and sustainable, predictable growth. Because what you don't want is to throw somebody into a bunch of stores and then turn around and take them out, because these are small businesses and Walmart can be so important to their business. So it has to be a very, I would say, responsible way of growing someone without holding them back.
Yeah, yeah. Derek, the other day, so behind the scenes, guys, actually, I have to ask a question. Can anybody hear buzzing? Okay, good, because somebody's blowing leaves, to be truthful and honest. So if anybody hears buzzing, you have to tell me, buzzing now, and I get up, you talk amongst yourselves, and I go and say to somebody, anyway, Zoom world, welcome to my life. Anyway, it's lucky I'm not blowing the leaves, right? So Derek, when you and Psyche were talking the other day, just by way of background, you had made a comment to her because she was talking about hand sanitizer products. I mean, is that, you know, this is the small world opportunity, right? You get to know somebody, you meet somebody, there's an interesting, you know, opportunity. Does it work like that anymore? Or is it really now has to be much more structured? And
Yeah, I mean, clearly, you know, from my chair, I would say it still works that way to a certain point. I mean, do I want to be structured, and do I envy what large multinational global retailers do? Certainly. But in our DNA is a spirit of flexibility, agility, and entrepreneurial adventure. So, you know, something like hand sanitizer, you know, perfect case, because when this hit in, you know, let's say mid-February, when, you know, my job didn't necessarily shift, but I would say that due to COVID, you know, I became much more focused on my internal team members and even the end customer. And I mean, every merchant says that, but, you know, we lived it. And so I looked at it as, you know, as the head merchant, I need to make sure I have PPE in my stores, that if people are literally risking their lives, I can't run out of disinfectant or soap or hand sanitizer for store use, for team members. And oh, by the way, I'm a capitalist. I want to make some money too, and I want to sell it. And so that meant that, you know, if it was a stage gate 6-month process for someone to meet with me, give me samples, and then get the shelf, this became 6 hours. You know, I mean, if I was talking with a distiller or with another one of my vendors who literally was in a totally different space, who said, I am getting ready to procure, you know, back then we didn't want to do the N95 mask because of the implications on our healthcare professionals, and I didn't want to take away from them, but I felt a KN95 or a fabric mask or a 3-ply surgical, and we quickly sourced it. And then when the world ran out in March and April, we had it for all of our team members. We had it to sell, and you know, it made me look really prescient in some levels, but it was just instincts, it was guts. And to your point, Wendy, it was relationship based, and being a listener and talking with the suppliers and being transparent of, you know, here's my focus, here's what I'm trying to solve. And you know, it may not be in that partner's short-term interest in terms of what their core product SKUs are, but if you are flexible and you're agile and you can pivot, there's big opportunity with a lot of retailers, and we're still going through it, right? I mean, whether some areas of the country, second surge, others are third surge, you know, I'm still, my number one skill set for my merchandising team is flexibility. And I keep telling them, we have to identify products and services, get them into our distribution channels, and to our supply chain network and get them to the stores or to the shelf. And that is the calling right now. You know, my
Yeah.
stores are still
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
You know, they
And,
don't
and,
have
and I, yeah, and I do think, you know, we've all talked about this notion of community and how, particularly with the Black community, as we've been thinking about building brands and businesses, you know, that sort of challenge of I'm a Black-owned brand and I'm going to, you know, come and sell to somebody, or I'm a Black-owned brand and now I'm going to be sold to somebody.
right.
And, you know, I think about the opportunities of collaboration, but I think about, you know, Erica, I know, you know, the challenges. I've been lucky enough to meet Lisa Price. She's an extraordinary woman and such an amazing advocate. And I think about it's building the broader community, right? It's building everybody's livelihood. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because that just feels like it's fraught with challenge. And so my job is to raise these questions. So, you know, let me just drop you right in that, Miss Erica.
Wendy, that's an understatement. It really is a slippery slope in terms of what is the role of a multinational company, and especially a CPG company, in terms of supporting Black entrepreneurs. Because on the one hand, there is the support in terms of acquiring a brand and making that brand broadly accessible to many more consumers. So in the example I just shared, going from 2,500 doors to 30,000 doors, making this brand way more accessible than it had been in its 20-year history. However, at the same time, you take a brand that was originally Black owned and it is no longer Black owned, and there is certainly I'm trying to find a nice word to say, but there is a lot of backlash that comes with that, because Black people already don't have that many things that you own on your own. And to take something that is this precious jewel within the community and now is owned by the big bad white guy, for lack of a better word, in terms of L'Oreal, was a huge challenge, and it continues to be a challenge to this day. But what we do is, first of all, we protect the authenticity of the brand. We keep what is really special about the brand, which is the founder, who is very much involved and my partner every day in terms of running this brand and being the voice of the brand. And the creator behind all the products on the brand. So it is extremely important to preserve what is authentic and to preserve those true relationships with the community, as well as to build as you climb. So support other Black entrepreneurs as well. So we support Black creators, we support Black event companies, Black agencies. There are other Black entrepreneurs who are very much still integrated into our plans, as well as supporting Black talent on the team. So the number of Black people you have on your team and how you continue to grow and support them throughout the organization. So trying to have conversations with our community around the impact that we can have as a Black founded brand that is also Black led, but no longer Black owned. So it's a really slippery but important slope that we have to balance every day.
Yeah, and I think, Psyche, you've talked about, you know, your support of communities as part of the sort of inherent as builders, as you said, Eric, I think, build as you grow. And Psyche, you're giving back and your focus on that. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think Derek's talked about community and serving the communities as Angel has, and helping educate the communities. You give back to communities. That's how you really got started in so many ways. And I think this feels like an essence to Black entrepreneurship, and how we continue to build that as a critical facet to growing companies.
Absolutely. So many really good nuggets. Yes. So one thing I think is extremely important to the authenticity of Black-owned businesses is that past tense that I talked about, that historic time that I talked about. Not only were slaves sharing ideas or sharing meals or sharing beauty routines, they were also helping each other, helping raise each other's children. And that is what, for instance, my family calls just raising someone else's child is just a part of the community. You're doing a community service. So it's a passed down storyline that I know about, that I was a part of, that my friends were a part of. So it only makes sense that as we grow, that we build as we grow, that we do the same thing if we have more, right? So to much whom is given, right? It's so much more expected of me. So with Urban Hydration, as we grew, we realized that we had an opportunity to turn it right back around and not just give a scholarship to my alma mater, not just take kids out for baseball games, but what is a lasting Oprah-like impact, which Oprah, another Black-owned business owner, right? So what's an Oprah-like impact that we can make? And let me tag back to a couple different thoughts with that. Oprah, once again, she shared an entire beauty of giving back. Same storyline. When we as Black small business owners get to see the likes of Oprah, and let me tag over to something that you just shared, Erica, about acquiring a white-owned or a Black-owned business as a white organization, majority white organization. We as small business owners are looking at that. We are choosing to know that, wow, it's possible. We can grow. So those are actually definitely two different sides of the story. But as a small Black woman-owned business, I get to look and go Lisa, which is a good friend of mine. Go Oprah, not a good friend of mine, but still, I get to look,
yes.
And go, yes, how can I do what Oprah's doing? Which allowed us the thought process of, we got to figure something out. So now every product that we create, every product that we sell, we partner with our buyers, we partner with our retailers, and we donate one gallon of clean drinking water to building wells in Kenya. On Giving Tuesday, we'll launch our very first campaign for our very own well. We've been the largest contributors on 2 wells. So we have 2 wells in Kenya now that are feeding children 400 kiddos and more. But this new well is a 70,000 community people, family well, filler or feeder. I'm beyond excited, but all of this comes from community, understanding community, being raised by the community, either my sorors or my frat brothers or things that came around me to make me a better person. So it's upon me. I've got to do the same thing for others.
Yeah, it sounds to me, as we've talked about this, just this short time really, is that as we think about the essence of Black businesses and the value, going back to that very first question I asked about what do Black businesses bring to an organization, that there are so many obvious and less obvious elements. It's the innovation, the newness that you talked about, Angel, the leading edge. It's the being within the community, like you said, Derek, because you're smaller format, serving lots of needs. And now this notion about how do you either build organizations, Erica, and support lots of levels of lots of different areas of expertise, and Psyche, the passion for giving back to the broader communities, and taking your heritage in that. These feel like incredibly contemporary stories, incredibly relevant to everybody, and the learning of innovation and integrity and history and storytelling and serving individual communities. The reason I just said all that was a sort of like many light bulbs went on in my head, and I thought, so what the heck is the issue here? So me being blunt in my normal bluntness. So what are we've got a few more minutes, what are the barriers here that we have to get over from all of our ends? What are the barriers?
I can jump in real quick. I can, one of the barriers we had is, despite all these amazing things that you see in the brand, sometimes the size of the prize of where it is right now versus where you project it to be can be a barrier in terms of an acquisition, or is that a brand that we want to really invest in to grow? And so you really have to fight. And that's the reality of any brand within a CPG company. You have to really fight for your resources, and you have to fight to show what the potential of your brand is. And if you're a brand that wants to be acquired by a multinational company, you really have to be able to show what the value is and what your long-term earning potential is.
Okay. Other barriers that you see? Derek, Angel?
Yeah, I'll chime in briefly. I mean, clearly there are systemic and institutional barriers, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that, right? I mean, as you talked about my background and all of us on this panel, I think we subscribe to each one, teach one, reach one, all of those aspects. We've been lifelong learners. We are trying to break down the barriers, and all of us have broken through in some capacity, but that also makes the challenge and the burden actually heavier, because in many ways we are that sole voice or the representation, and we have a responsibility to not only break the barriers for our personal, but to also then educate and show a path. Those things take time. I mean, I can talk about retail or CPG, and I've been in the industries now 20 plus years, and it still is uncomfortable because I'm breaking through and might be the lone presence. And so I have to be the champion and sometimes pound the damn table because it's that serious. And if people don't want to see it, or they want to say I'm colorblind, and okay, that is dismissive of everything that came prior and the barriers that still stop us. And, these are things that, we just have to actively confront. Access to capital, being having equity, having skin in the game, not always looking at an exit as a negative. Sometimes that's a positive, but if you don't know, these are things that each of us can teach others and pull along, but it's time, that's a barrier. I mean, sadly and unfortunately, it's going to take the collective effort and more time for us to make real progress, so that we aren't still talking about the Oprahs and the 1 and 2 and the 3 that have made it, but it becomes representative.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it, because in the very first panel that we did, there was really this conversation. I put my hand up and said, why am I here? The representative of the white community. And AC Eggleston-Bracey from Unilever said, because if you're not in the room with us, we can't get this done. And that, it's not upon you all to do all the educating. We have to be open to this very serious conversation. And the thing that you have all done so clearly is talk about the pure business opportunity, from you, Angel, who said that as we opened up here, the business opportunity, but serving communities as well, in many ways. And I think that's the other piece. We can't let the burden all end up on you, the community at large, which is why we've been doing these sessions through WE. So, I really feel that this has told us a lot about how your companies are thinking about entrepreneurship and what needs to be done and what we need to do more actively here. Just before we go to Q&A, and we do have some questions, just any last thoughts? One thing that you think either you haven't had a chance to say, or you think that for all the Black-owned businesses out there watching, or other companies who really need to open their eyes to the opportunity. One thing? Angel, you started, let you finish.
I would just say to be open. Whenever a Black-owned business comes to you or you're trying to find it, don't put them in a box, because they're not just serving the Black community. They can serve any community and be very dynamic and help you change the game in your organization, whether that's you hiring somebody, whether that's you bringing on a Black-owned brand, or even buying a Black-owned brand. Like, take the effort and open your mind to all the different possibilities these organizations can bring to you and your businesses.
Okay. Anybody else? Any last thoughts before we open the floor?
Wendy, I would like to just chime in one thing around what you were saying around advocacy. And I would challenge everybody watching this to think of one way that you can be an advocate for a Black entrepreneur. Because thinking back to the heat Black Lives Matter movement, if you will, this summer. And there were so many of my white counterparts who came to me in private and said, I don't know what to do. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. I'm afraid that if I say something, I'm going to say the wrong thing, and then it's going to set off a whole other firestorm. And I said, do what feels right to you. So everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something. And so find that one thing or one way that you can be an advocate for a Black entrepreneur, and you will make a difference. And then you can also build as you grow from that point. But don't think you have to do everything at one point. But not being afraid and not doing anything is the worst thing you could possibly do.
Well, that's a perfect wrap up to the end of this. So I thank you all. Don't go away, because Sue's going to come back on in a second and she's going to ask you some of the questions, and then we will wrap all this up. But you're amazing. I can't thank you all enough, and I wish you great health and wealth and happiness more than anything else. Okay, Miss Sue, I'll let you come right back in.
Thank you so much. And Erica, you actually answered the first question on what would be advocacy for a Black-owned business. So we thank you for that. That was the very first question. Second question is, and this is probably directed, probably most beneficial to Angel, is we understand that there's a trend factor, but there's a performance factor as well, and an expansion into other demographics. So how would you answer that question?
So yeah, I think the trend factor, we talked about the trend and how small companies can be very nimble. Psyche pointed that out with the hand sanitizer, being able to act quickly. The hand sanitizer isn't just for Black people, it's for all people. Anybody can use hand sanitizer and should be using it. So that's an example of like a Black-owned business serving the broader community. When we talk about sales, I think you cannot bring in any small indie brands and hold them to the same caliber as you do a P&G Tide, for example. They're gonna sell a lot of Tide. If you brought in a smaller niche brand, it's gonna take time to grow to that level. So when I'm looking at financials, I'm breaking it out in different segments to make sure I'm protecting those brands and helping them incubate and grow. I would say also putting attention onto the brand. If you just set it on the shelf and forget it, everybody's gonna forget about it. Like, you have to have marketing, you have to have support of your organization to promote and highlight the storytelling and the community efforts the brands are doing, especially when you're targeting like the Gen Z consumer. The Gen Z consumer loves the small brand. They love the storytelling. They love the trend. They love it being authentic. And they want to find it. But if we're not talking about it and having a cohesive story, you're not going to see those sales. I also think you have to be patient. Brands take a while to grow. When I was at Anheuser-Busch, we could, pump out a brand and it's a multi-million-dollar brand in 6 months because it's the power of Anheuser-Busch. Small brands take 3 to 5 years, maybe even 20 years to grow, and you have to carve out the space to be patient and protect that.
Thank you. And I think the next question is probably most appropriate for Erica, knowing you have Safshin Carson and Carol's daughter. How does acquisition of a Black-owned business by a large retailer change the business model, or does it?
In an ideal world, it doesn't. So one of the questions earlier was, what is the benefit to companies from acquiring entrepreneurial brands? And one thing is that you learn new, more efficient ways to do things. So I keep going back to the Carol's daughter example because that one was the most recent acquisition. But when we acquired, Carol's daughter was light years ahead of many of our sister brands in the digital space. And so we were able to learn how to do digital from a L'Oreal USA standpoint through the acquisition of Carol's daughter. And we also had acquired NYX at the time. And it was the insights from these entrepreneurial brands that helped to set and inform the digital strategy for all of L'Oreal USA. So much more efficient business models, different ways to communicate and relate to our consumers. Is just like a few examples.
Thank you. Now, I think the next question is probably appropriate for Psyche. Someone is curious about your perspective on the opportunities and barriers to capital investment for Black entrepreneurs. How do you coach someone who has a great idea but doesn't know where or how to start raising capital?
Well, we bootstrapped, just my personal story. I can remember cashing out my 401k, leaving maybe $1,000 left in it. I took the onus of making the thing happen myself, believing in my brand, which I love that so many brands do that. But then what, when you run out of cash? And we did run out of cash. Our relationships go far and wide, and we had shared the brand story with so many people. We were so authentic about how we believed in the opportunity of having clean beauty products that give back in every retailer possible. Our finance partners that we work with now have been with us now for about 5 years, and they're a Black family, they're Black owned, and it's just been a beautiful relationship. They own a small minority share of our company. I own the most of this thing because I put a whole lot of sweat into it. But the pure fact of some of the classes that I went through and went to, I signed up for Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses, and it truly taught me how to go after money, how to go after cash, how to learn how to speak and talk so that I could be heard, and also how to create books that are shareable and books that are interesting enough to want to be married into. And like I said, about 5 years ago, Torrey Hunter, famous baseball player, and his wife, they said, "What's up?" And I said, "What's up?" And it kind of went that way. They're best friends of ours now and huge supporters of our Black-owned business. And anything we need, they're right there. So I say the mentoring and the guidance should really come from organizations and institutions that really understand business and numbers and books versus just talking to a friend. I think when it comes to numbers, definitely connect to a Goldman Sachs organization for some true mentorship. And it's free. That's the thing. These are free tools for Black-owned businesses, for small businesses. It wasn't just because I was Black. It was because I was a small business that needed help.
Thank you so much. And I know we're out of time. We have some other questions that we'll make sure that we answer. Thank you so much today for your time. I could talk about this for hours. I could be on Zoom for the next 4 hours. So just thank you so much for your time, for we specifically, but for the industry, and for us to be able to learn a bit more about how we can support this initiative and this discussion. We're going to upload this recorded session onto forwe.org, and please share it with your teams. Our next event is November 11th, so please put it on your calendar. We would love for everyone to join again. But again, thank you so much for your time. Angel, Psyche, Erica, Derek, Wendy, of course. Thank you again. We really appreciate your time. I hope you all have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.